Did you see Glee last night?
No, but your intro song should remind everybody that it was on, because it sounds like something they would redo.
Quick Draw McGraw?
That's
theme?
right. That would be perfect for the kids on Glee.
You know that when they told my sisters that you were going to have a baby boy and his name was McGraw, they thought, we're going to have a cartoon as a brother. And they had no idea how right they really were.
Like Nostradamus is your sister.
They actually do have a cartoon for a brother.
Zoinks!
That's the voice of Scott Sherman, who can be heard here 9 to midnights in the Big 550 KTRS. How are things going with the night project?
Fantastic.
With, the Scott Sherman project.
We're having a great time. We're doing a lot of topics, news topics, legal topics once in a while. We sprinkle it in. We
All right.
make fun of celebrities from time to time. It's good.
All right,
good
good.
times.
And you're still your key still works at the station, so the station either is not listening or says it's acceptable.
Well, they've only changed the keypad here, I think, once in the last 10 years, and
which is interesting considering
since I've been
they fired 8,000 people in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think I was 2 of them.
Well, we won't change it till Carney gets fired. That's for sure.
As well.
Hey, crew. All right. So the last couple of weeks, we've ran into some interesting topics here in the state of Missouri. Let me just recap for a second.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled that a same-sex, that a trooper who dies in the line of duty on Christmas Day, who was in an undisputed, committed gay relationship, his partner is not allowed the benefits of a survivor of a state trooper because they weren't legally married. And yet today, Governor Jay Nixon signs an executive order saying that anybody who is married outside of the state of Missouri can file a joint tax return inside the state of Missouri. Do I have that correct?
Pretty much, as yesterday.
Okay.
All right. Do you want me to, which part of that you want me to go after?
I want
Jay
you to
Nixon
I want you to
stuff
explain to me and everybody listening why Jay Nixon can just unilaterally decide to make up a classification of people with a stroke of a pen.
He didn't.
Oh, all right. Thanks for the phone call.
That's it. Okay.
All right, good. Who's your sponsor?
Walter Noah Flores. Here's what happened. Missouri has a law, a statute, that says that however you are required or permitted to file federal taxes, you must file in Missouri the same way. So really goes back to the IRS. So the IRS came out with an opinion, I think it was 13-1406, whatever it's called, based on the Windsor case that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court in June, which said that DOMA, which prevents same-sex partners from getting federal benefits, since that was struck down, if you're lawfully married in a state that recognizes same-sex marriage, then the IRS will now recognize those people as spouses for filing federal income tax.
Okay.
So they can file jointly if they're lawfully married in a jurisdiction that recognizes
So a neighboring state like Iowa, you can go and get married in Iowa. You come to Missouri, you're not recognized, but you're recognized by Iowa and the federal government.
That's right.
Okay.
Therefore, since the IRS came out with their advisory opinion that those folks can file jointly as spouses, Missouri's statute that requires you to file in Missouri with the Department of Revenue the same way you file federally, then what Jay Nixon just did is he just linked it up and said, since Missouri requires you to do it just like the feds, if you're married in a state that recognizes same-sex marriage, you can file jointly in Missouri.
Because he's not really going out on a limb here. He's saying, look, the law says if you file jointly with the feds, you have to file jointly.
That's right.
with Missouri.
It says you shall.
You shall.
So you must follow the feds. It's like the tail wagging the dog wagging the tail. The Missouri's the tail.
Gotcha.
So since the IRS said it's okay now for you to file jointly, even if you live in a state that doesn't recognize same-sex marriage, then you can file jointly federally.
Okay.
and then Missouri just kind of tagged along with that. But what Jay Nixon did, which is interesting, is this was really hidden in there, is this is his announcement supporting same-sex marriage for the first time. He put in his press release, a lot of people, myself included, think that it's time now to not discriminate against, and I would support. So this was really sort of a no big deal kind of executive order, but it's really a support of same-sex marriage couched as an executive order.
Mm-hmm.
You got to read the press release.
Then
your buddy, what's his name, the speaker,
the Tim Jones,
he don't like this.
Now I don't
He's
understand why Tim Jones doesn't like this. I thought he was for freedom.
He's a fake conservative. That's why, because he doesn't mind.
He's a faux conservative.
He doesn't mind when the government is involved in your private business when he doesn't agree with your private business. So he's not. He thinks this is some left-wing stuff, and he was criticizing Nixon in his own press conference, his own press release, as being too liberal. When really this is the more keep your government away from my privacy,
right?
Which is the same position as U.S. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, which is the person that started all of this in 2003 in the Lawrence v. Texas case by outlawing gay sodomy laws.
Right.
That's where all of this same-sex marriage
are straight sodomy laws allowed?
No. Well, maybe.
Well, except in Virginia. That's what happened the other day, a couple of weeks ago.
They did?
Yeah, with that whole Virginia thing.
Yeah, those probably are legal.
I don't want to talk about
the sodomy.
I don't want to talk about that. All right.
Gross.
All right. So,
sometime.
All right. I said I didn't want to talk about it, and then you go ahead and talk about it. All right. Stop. Okay.
That's a nighttime show.
So Tim Jones, who's against frivolous lawsuits, yet wants to sue me. For inviting him on the show to defend himself.
I thought it was for making fun of him or something.
It was, but I invited him on the show first, and then he threatened to sue me.
Yeah, that was another Supreme Court case. Flint versus Hustler versus Falwell. 9-0. You can make fun of famous people. See, these people need to read some Supreme Court cases. I mean, Larry Flint won at the Supreme Court 25 years ago.
Yes.
And he's the guy. And it was like 9-0.
Yes.
You can make fun of politicians.
Which was a great that was a great movie.
It was.
The People
Larry
versus
Flint
Flint
also, he's making news in Missouri because he opposes the execution of that Franklin guy.
That's on the list. I just want to get this. Now, explain to me.
Yeah.
So in 2013, you go to Iowa.
Yep.
Neighboring state.
Mm-hmm.
You get married. Iowa recognizes it. The feds recognize any state that recognizes it. And so you choose to live in St. Louis.
Come back.
You choose to live in Pacific or wherever. You choose to live next to Tim Jones in Eureka. And you file jointly. Now, not only is this freedom-loving and government getting out of your business, but it's lowering taxes. So you telling me that Tim Jones is for higher taxes for people?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there was all this thing about the marriage penalty and the death tax.
Right. You save money.
Stuff that gets
you pay
applause.
less taxes if you can file jointly.
Right.
So he's for higher taxes and for no freedom.
I guess.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: you're not married in Missouri.
Right. But basically
because of the constitutional amendment.
What Jay Nixon just did here was he basically created a civil union class.
No.
No, yeah, he did. I mean, he did because
they're all saying yes.
Because there's now a way to file jointly. So you're not legally married in the state of Missouri, yet you're getting some of the benefits of a union. So in a sense, this is one instance, a step in the civil union realm.
Okay. I don't think so.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Does this do anything?
The Trooper case bothers me, not because of the outcome, but because they wouldn't let the same-sex partner challenge these laws that prevent same-sex couples from even getting married in the first place.
Right.
They wouldn't let them have standing. And I still think that somebody needs to challenge Article 1, Section 33 of the Missouri Constitution on equal protection and on due process grounds, just like they did in California with Prop 8.
All right, that's Scott Sherman. He hosts the Scott Sherman Experience from 9 to midnight in the Big 550 KTRS Monday through Friday. We're going to come back. I want to talk about this Larry Flint story because that's really fascinating. The state of Missouri wants to get ready within 5 days to execute a very bad man who sits on death row. Larry Flynt, he actually shot Larry Flynt. Larry Flynt now lives in a wheelchair because of this man. He sits on the Missouri death row. Missouri wants to execute him, and Larry Flynt doesn't want him executed.
That's right.
Well, we'll come back and talk about it. 922 here on the Big 550. KTRF.
A little time alone with him. It's just me saying that I'm not ready to turn the other cheek. You know, I can oppose the death penalty and then still not want to turn the other cheek. So that's basically, I'm not saying that punishment shouldn't be dished out. It's just the way we do it.
That is Larry Flynt talking about the man who sits on the Missouri death row. Now, look, just so that everyone knows what's going on, this man first shot Larry Flynt, I want to say, was it in Georgia?
Yeah, there was a Sodom or a obscenity case going on.
In Georgia, and he was shot in the courthouse steps.
Yeah, he shot Larry Flynt after a series of fire bombings and racially and religiously based murders, including but not limited to Jerry Gordon, who was a man attending a bar mitzvah at a synagogue right across from the Galleria in 1977.
Okay, right. So just so we have the timeline, he shoots Larry Flynt, who was the owner of Hustler magazine and Hustler play clubs, and there's a couple on the east side, I guess. I only know that from the billboards I see from time to time.
Yes.
Okay, so while not being arrested for shooting Larry Flynt a year later, he finds himself in St. Louis and shoots this guy at this synagogue.
Well, I think he commits the murder first, and he shoots Larry Flynt in 78. Most of the killings are 77, 78, and
Okay.
I think Larry Flynt's later. But he shoots and paralyzes Larry Flynt.
Okay, he was convicted of the crime in Missouri. He was sentenced to death in Missouri.
Yeah,
that's why Missouri has him. That's why Missouri's going to execute this guy.
And he killed a lot of people.
He's not a very good man. He's been implemented in 8 other cases. He's been convicted or at least admitted to 8, and he admitted to shooting Larry Flynt.
Yeah, and everything was racially motivated. And the reason that he shot Gordon was Jewish. The reason that he killed a lot of these other people, either women had relationships or had boyfriends that in an interracial relationship. He killed black teenagers. This guy is a racist, anti-Semitic serial killer.
And there's a lot. If you're interested in it, what's going on in Missouri is it's really interesting when it comes to the death penalty, because it's had a moratorium because originally the person who was administering the drugs, he was dyslexic and he was putting the wrong amounts of liquid into the shots and didn't know if he was doing it in the right order. And so they got that guy out. And then all these medical associations are saying, anyone affiliated with us is not allowed to do that. These people who make the drugs are saying, we don't want our drugs to be used for the death penalty. Now it sits where the person who's going to administer the drugs is not known. And Larry Flynt is saying if he's supposed to be a true medical professional, and belongs to this organization, the organization does not want its members in good standing to administer the drugs. Larry Flynt wants to know the name of the guy because he isn't in good standing with his medical professional association.
I think Larry Flynt's point, his most salient point in opposing the death penalty, is that he believes that it is more damaging punishment for someone to spend the rest of their miserable life in prison than to relieve them of that misery by putting them to death this way. He doesn't feel that that Franklin is going to get the proper punishment by basically letting him out of his misery.
He would rather have him rot in jail.
Well, yeah, and he wants the back end of that about turning the other cheek is he wants some time with him alone with some pliers and wire cutters and let him know what he's been through. And Larry Flynt, for whatever you think about the business practices, this guy's been through a nightmare of pain and has been paralyzed for the last 35 years. And the reason that this Franklin guy said that he shot Larry Flynt at all was because Larry Flynt put a black woman in his magazine. So all of it was based on race and hatred and all of the rest.
Well, but again, and this is where I come down on this, and people think I'm somehow this gruesome thought. But again, it goes to trusting government. And, if we don't trust government to administer our health care, and we don't trust government to build our roads, we don't trust government to educate our children, we don't trust government to do anything, and yet nobody asks the question, why do we trust them to execute the guilty? I want to see it. Why do they have all of these open laws and sunset laws, and I'm allowed to look at all these emails, except, trust us, we're going to execute the bad guy?
No, I think that's a very interesting and
brilliant point.
It's somewhere this side of brilliant, but it's a good point. And I still support the death penalty because of the roster of people that have committed heinous crimes. Nobody is missing John Wayne Gacy. Nobody is missing Ted Bundy. Nobody's missing Albert Fish, who was one of the most disgraceful human beings in the face of the earth in the 30s. Nobody is missing the Nazis that perpetrated the Holocaust. But yet, you turn around and you look at the justice system and you go, but you know what? They've executed some people that probably were innocent.
Illinois,
and they've convicted
Illinois released 13 people off of death row
because they had police officers that were taking, basically suffocating people with the typewriter covers until they confessed. And then you have cases like Ryan Ferguson, where after 10 years, a guy's convicted of murder, not only gets to go free, but essentially the Court of Appeals said, it's not the guy. It's not just a technicality. So I wrestle with the idea of the death penalty, yet at the same time, I don't see it being any worse to wrongfully convict someone who dies in prison innocent than to execute someone who's been wrongfully convicted.
I don't have a
I still think there are crimes so heinous that they deserve the ultimate punishment.
I don't have a problem with the death penalty myself. However, I do have a problem with the lies around it. And that the person who is the evangelical Christian, the Catholic, right, who says, the Catholic Church, it's wrong. If you choose to live your life as the doctrine you follow, let's just take Catholics. I've had this conversation, and I've gone around and around with Catholic priests and bishops and everybody else on this. And that the Catholic Church says, no, death penalty is wrong, but it's not intrinsically wrong. Abortion, that's intrinsically wrong. Oh, okay, so you can disagree with the church on the death penalty, but you can't disagree with them on abortion. Correct. Like, that is really confusing. That doesn't make any sense to me. If you're pro-life, you're pro-life. Whether it's an innocent life or a guilty life or anything else, if you believe only God has the right to give and take life, it's fine. You're going to tell me you have a right to execute a person who's guilty, but you yourself don't have a right to take your own life or to stop taking medicine that will extend your life because only God has a right to take somebody's life? So, I mean, right?
The theologic stuff I leave to people
No,
smarter
but
than
I mean,
me.
here in Missouri, we had the Busalaki case where the family and the woman was comatose and in a coma, and you had all these people saying, "How dare you? You are not allowed to take away this woman's right to breathe and to eat." And you're like, well, but that's not your choice. That's each individual's choice. We have people who are not allowed to end their life, which is why Kevorkian spent time in jail, because that man had a right. Does that man not have a right to execute himself or to put himself to sleep or to put himself out of his misery? No, only the state can do that. Oh, okay, well, let me see that. No, you're not allowed to see it. The hypocrisy that accompanies the death penalty is staggering. People want to do it because it saves money. No, actually, to execute somebody, it costs the state more money to execute them than it does. Well, let's just do away with all the appeals. Well, if you do away with all the appeals, Chicago and Illinois kills 13 innocent people. So I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with the hypocrisy and the misinformation surrounding it.
I completely agree on the hypocrisy point, and I'm for complete, having the clarity and openness. I think that these things in some way should be almost televised.
I agree completely.
I want to have my government as transparent as possible.
That's exactly right.
And if we can't stomach it at some point, then maybe we will change and say we don't want it. I don't advocate against the death penalty. There are people that say, you're just gonna make a freak show out of it. Well, you know what? I think people need to know the pain that the victims went through.
Well, and
they also need to know what's being done in their name.
If you want it as a deterrent, why not put it on the 6 o'clock evening news?
I don't even know that deterrent is my argument. I think there are punishments, there are crimes where that punishment is befitting of that crime.
Okay, but the people who say it's a deterrent,
Yep.
fine. You believe it's a deterrent. Don't hide it. You're not going to punish somebody and then don't tell anybody you're going to do it.
Larry Flint's argument against deterrence was that during England, when they used to hang pickpockets, the people watching the public hangings were going around pickpocketing the people in the audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Scott Sherman, the host of the Scott Sherman Experience, 9 to midnight here on the Big 550 KTRS. John Bill 743 here on the Big 550 KTRS. We were doing a very nice show, not talking about the mayor of Toronto, and then right before we go on the air, you say, hey, how about the mayor of Toronto? Turn your microphone on.
Yeah, he single-handedly made himself the most famous mayor in North America. I bet you $1,000 a month ago you could not have named the mayor of Toronto. By the way, I have to correct you. You have to say it right now. It's not Toronto. It's Toronto. They don't pronounce that T. The Torontonians don't.
Oh, really? So it's
How's it going, eh?
But I'm not from Toronto.
Neither am I.
I'm from. All I know is I know it from my geography class as Toronto.
Yeah. Well, it's spelled that. This guy is crazy, and it's the greatest story in the world. He's nuts.
The guy is Looney Tunes.
It's like if Chris Farley was the mayor of Toronto, and John Belushi in one. He smokes crack. He's got terrible language.
Can we talk about something another mayor did that is unfortunately is overshadowed by the goings-on by the Joker up in Toronto?
Kwame Kilpatrick?
No. The new mayor of New York, de Blasio.
Oh, yeah.
So, and this, speaking of injustice and everything else, this story is so ridiculously fascinating to me because I remember it. I was living through it and in it and around it. And that is the Central Park jogger back in the late 80s.
Right.
These 5 black youths were arrested for wilding and convicted of beating up and raping and pillaging this woman who was a Central Park jogger, left her for dead. She's arrested. New York and the entire country
it's a huge story.
says these guys are guilty. There's no two ways about it. They are as guilty as string them up, execute them. They're as bad as they come.
No trial. Just take them out in the street.
Microcosm of what's going on with all of this crime in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
We need to take back the good part of America. It's outrageous. So they convict these 5, send them up to prison forever.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, 20 years later?
Yep.
20 years later, it turns out
they didn't do it.
not only it's not even hey, a technicality they're getting off.
Right.
It's without a doubt, there is no question that these 5 kids were completely innocent. Not only completely innocent, but there was questionable tactics by the police. There was DNA evidence that was questionable. There was, just the downright, we need to capture 5 people because the city's up in arms. And the first 5 people who walked through the police door were the 5 people they decided to pin this on.
It was like the Scottsboro Boys case from the early part of the 20th century where these young black kids were essentially accused of raping these white girls because they were black guys.
Right. They were already in custody. Ken Burns and his daughter did a documentary on this, and I saw it at the Tivoli the first day it came out. It was called the Central Park 5. And they were already in custody. And they were ready to be released, and the police station got a call saying, hey, some woman was beaten, raped, and left in Central Park where something's going on. So all of a sudden, the police said, hey, maybe it was those kids we have in lockup already. So they just decided, And then one thing led to another, and hey, you know what? Your buddy's going to turn on you. You might as well tell us what happened. I mean, it is just unbelievable. So now they're all released from prison. So now they want restitution. So they were arrested and convicted and sent to prison for 20 years. And so they wanted their piece of money out of New York City. And Bloomberg, for the last, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, was like, yeah, sorry, no, forget about it. Nothing. No justice. De Blasio gets elected, and when asked the question, he says, yeah, I'll settle the case. I'll settle it. I'll give them their money, and we will at least try and move on from here.
And then it brings us back to the Ryan Ferguson kid. It can be so hideous for someone who is accused of a crime they didn't commit, because digging yourself out of that hole when the police and the prosecutor's office are convinced that you did something, that it's almost an impossibility.
I remember I was in New York that summer, and talk about tensions. It was a very contentious time. I remember being
in this. It wasn't long after that Bernard Goetz had shot all those.
Don't get
people.
mad, get Goetz. Bernard Goetz in the subway. But he was being robbed, though, and he just took out his gun and just started firing at people.
Nuts.
Well, but he was being robbed. It wasn't like he was, the woman who was wrote a book, actually, and she said she doesn't remember anything about the incident. Nothing. And then the guy ultimately, the one guy who did do it confessed finally. He was in prison and said, oh, by the way, guess what? I was the one who did the Central Park rape.
And the DNA stuff that's developed since that to exonerate people, it's quite remarkable now.
Since I was living in it, everybody thinks they're fair-minded, and I'm smart enough to read the newspapers, and I can tell you what's going on, and I can read between the lines, and I'm smart enough to know if these guys were innocent or guilty. If you would have stood up in 1988 or 1989 and said, by the way, I think these guys are innocent, you would have been lynched. There's no way a talk show host, a columnist, a John Q. Public would have stood up at the end of the bar and was like, I think these 5 are innocent. You would have been labeled a pinko, commie, and you would have been any social circle you would have been thrown out because it would have been unacceptable. And it turns out they were innocent. I mean, it's really an eye-opening story. All right. 9:50 here on the Big 550 KTRS. Mark Rubin.
That's one of my dad's friends, by the way, just ironically.
Mark Rubin.
Picked that name out of the hat.
How about that? You're Scott Sherman. No relation to Mark Rubin.
I don't think so. I think
but
it
a
might
Reuben
be a cousin.
But a Reuben sandwich is quite good.
It sounds delicious.
And you're quite good with a
my
little Thousand Island.
show is as delicious as a Reuben's.
Put a little Thousand Island dressing on it.
Absolutely.
Who's your sponsor, Mark Rubin?
St. Louis Home Retention Group. All this talk about the Obamacare website and how government screws up, and you know what? They screw up a lot. One of the things that they screwed up about was kind of letting the mortgage industry run itself. Well, in order to sort of appease the markets and fix our economy so it wouldn't tank, they gave us, finally, a little bit of something. And the little something that they gave us were some federal programs that you could keep your house if you were behind on your payments, or if you weren't behind on your payments, but your value of your home, the equity in your home, went below what it used to be worth. HARP and HAMP, these are the acronyms. Well, you know who knows how to take advantage of those in the legal way? St. Louis Home Retention Group. Over a 90% success rate. Better Business Bureau rated, as high as any company. They get the job done. I know these guys. I've worked with these guys. They're fantastic people, and they will not give up until you get what is available for you. Stop messing around with amateurs. Go to the pros. St. Louis Home Retention Group, 636-527-5121, 636-527-5121, or St. Louis Home Retention Group.
9:54 here, Big 550 KTRS. Scott Sherman found a little wrinkle in the law, taking advantage of it. Tell us about this little wrinkle in the law you discovered.
I love this. Before Tim Jones and the opponents of freedom take it away from us, In Missouri, if you have had a DWI, even if it was a conviction, I know you're never supposed to have one, but mistakes happen, and 10 years has gone by, the law guarantees that you can get an expungement, meaning that no conviction, no arrest record, no fingerprint trail, none of that. And we ran into a case recently where there was an employee at a major higher education employer here, and they went back and looked at his application and said, you lied to us. You told us you had never been had an arrest. And they found the arrest record even though he had never been convicted. His lawyer had told him no one's ever going to find out about it. Well, a friend of mine got that straightened out, so he got to keep his job. However, you won't have this problem if you get what's called an expungement. And my friends at the DWI expungement lawyers know exactly how to do it. It's a money-back guarantee.
All right, so at some point in the past, you have a DUI.
Yep.
You get a conviction. You deal with that. Minimum 10 years goes by. You're clean. You don't have any more problems with the law, no more DUIs, nothing. 10 years later, you're clean, yet that's still on your record. You're telling me in the state of Missouri, you can get that conviction thrown out, not on your record, as a do-over 10 years later.
That's right, a one-time smart bomb do-over, even if it wasn't a conviction. But now they have these websites where they have mug shots on there. These old mug shots are coming up. People are starting to ask questions, employers, about arrests. DWI expungement lawyers, 631-0521, 314-631-0525.
If I get this expunged, can I tell my insurance person that I never was convicted of a crime?
That is right. You will honestly say it never happened. Never happened.
What's the phone number?
631-0525.
What's the website?
Working on it.
All right. They're so busy they don't have time for a website. One more time, the phone number.
314-631-0525.
Or ask for Scott Sherman, and he'll be happy to talk to you about it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Don't forget Boomer Bash on Sunday, 11 to 3, Busch Stadium to the left.